Han Kim stared at the strange metal box on his desk. It was small, about the size of his hand, and had markings he had never seen before. The night shift at the Seoul Institute of Advanced Physics was always quiet, but tonight felt different. The air seemed to buzz with energy. He found the box while cleaning his quantum physics lab. It had been hidden behind some old equipment, covered in dust. At first, he thought it was just another forgotten piece of lab equipment. But when he picked it up, it felt warm to his touch. Han was 32 years old and had worked at the institute for 5 years. He was known for being careful and thorough in his work. That's why he didn't just open the box right away. Instead, he ran some basic tests first. The results made no sense. His instruments showed that the box was putting out more energy than it should be able to. It broke the laws of physics as he knew them. Han checked his equipment 3 times, but the readings stayed the same. "This can't be right," he said to himself, pushing his glasses up his nose. The empty lab didn't answer. The only sound was the quiet hum of computers and the ticking of the wall clock showing 11:30 p.m. After another hour of tests, Han decided to open the box. His hand shook slightly as he found the edge of what looked like a lid. As soon as his fingers touched it, the box grew warmer. The lid opened with a soft click. A bright light filled the room, forcing Han to close his eyes. When he opened them again, he gasped. Floating in the air in front of his desk was a woman. But she wasn't like any woman he had ever seen. Her hair looked like it was made of starlight, flowing around her head as if she was underwater. Her skin had a soft, pearl-like glow. She wore what looked like a traditional Korean hanbok, but it seemed to be made of shifting colors and patterns that reminded Han of the northern lights he had seen once on a research trip. "Hello, Han Kim," she said in perfect Korean. Her voice was gentle, but held a hint of power, like distant thunder. "I am Hae-yun." Han stood up so quickly that his chair fell over. He backed away until he hit the wall. How do you know my name?" Hae-yun smiled. "I know many things. I am what your people might call a Genie, though that word doesn't quite capture what I am. I am bound to that box you found, and now that you have opened it, I must grant you wishes." Han's scientific mind started working overtime. Wishes. Like in old stories. This must be some kind of trick. Maybe I fell asleep in the lab again. "This is no trick," Hae-yun said. She waved her hand, and Han's fallen chair lifted itself up and settled back in place. "I am as real as the quantum particles you study. In fact, what I am is not so different from what you seek to understand in your research." Han walked slowly back to his chair and sat down. His heart was racing, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. If you're real, then there must be a scientific explanation for what you are and what you can do. Hae-yun's smile grew wider. "Ah, that is why you were chosen. Most humans would have already asked for riches or power. But you want to understand." "Chosen?" Han asked. "The box didn't just end up here by accident." "Nothing this important happens by accident, Han Kim," Hae-yun said. She floated down until her feet touched the floor. "I am here to grant you exactly 2.5 wishes. Not one more, not one less. Choose them wisely." Han looked at his computer, then at his notebooks full of quantum physics equations, and finally back at Hae-yun. His mind was already filling with questions about how her powers worked, about the energy readings he had detected, about the very nature of reality itself. 2.5 wishes, he repeated slowly. "And I can wish for anything." "There are rules," Hae-yun said. "There are always rules. But yes, within those rules, you may wish for almost anything. Though I must warn you." She paused, looking suddenly serious. "In all my thousands of years, I have never met a human who used their wishes quite the way they expected to." Han nodded, his mind already working on the possibilities. He was about to say something when his phone buzzed. It was a text from his colleague Jae-won, asking if he was still in the lab. He looked at the time. It was past midnight. I need time to think, he said. Of course, He-Yun replied. But not too long. Once the wishing begins, it must be completed within 3 days. Du-Han looked at the beautiful cosmic being standing in his lab, and for the first time that night, he smiled. Then I better start thinking carefully. Du-Han spent the entire night reading through his old research papers. He-Yun watched him with growing interest as he made notes and drew diagrams. She had never seen anyone prepare for a wish like this before. The morning sun was just starting to shine through the lab windows when Du-Han finally looked up from his work. His eyes were tired, but they held a determined look. I'm ready to make my first wish, he said. He-Yun nodded and stood straighter. The air in the room began to shimmer around her. Speak your wish, Du-Han Kim. Du-Han took a deep breath. I wish for the complete understanding of your power source and the ability to replicate it. The shimmer in the air stopped. He-Yun's eyes went wide with surprise. For a moment, she said nothing, just stared at him. Is something wrong? Du-Han asked. In all my thousands of years, He-Yun said slowly, no one has ever wished to understand what I am. They wish for gold, for power, for love, but never for knowledge of our nature. Is it against the rules? Du-Han asked, worried that he had made a mistake. He-Yun shook her head. No, it is not against the rules. It is just unexpected. She moved closer to him. Are you sure this is what you want? You could have anything. Wealth beyond measure, perfect health, even great power. Knowledge is power, Du-Han said simply. And understanding how your power works could help all of humanity, not just me. A small smile appeared on He-Yun's face. Very well. But I must warn you. This knowledge is vast. It may be overwhelming. I'm ready, Du-Han said. He-Yun raised her hand and touched Du-Han's forehead. Instantly, his mind filled with information. He saw how the beings humans called genies were actually advanced cosmic entities. He understood how they use zero-point energy, pulling power from the space between spaces. Equations and concepts beyond human science poured into his mind. Du-Han gasped as the knowledge filled him. His legs felt weak, and he had to sit down. Images of impossible geometry and mathematical formulas danced in his vision. This is incredible, he whispered. He could see now how He-Yun's powers worked. It wasn't magic at all. It was advanced science, manipulating the very fabric of reality. Just then, the lab door opened. Ji-Won Park, Du-Han's colleague, walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw He-Yun. Du-Han, Ji-Won said, her voice shaking slightly. Who is this? Before Du-Han could answer, his nose started bleeding. The knowledge was too much for his brain to handle all at once. He needs rest, He-Yun said, moving quickly to help him stay upright in his chair. The knowledge will settle over the next few hours. It's too much to process all at once. Ji-Won put down the coffee cups and rushed to help. To her credit, she didn't run away screaming at the sight of the glowing woman with starlight hair. What did you do to him? Ji-Won demanded. He wished for understanding, He-Yun replied, and I granted it. But human minds need time to adjust to cosmic knowledge. Du-Han managed to focus his eyes on Ji-Won. It's okay, he said weakly. I know how it works now. All of it. We're going to change the world. Ji-Won looked confused, but she helped He-Yun move Du-Han to the lab's small break room couch. As they made him comfortable, Du-Han's mind continued to sort through the vast knowledge he had received. He now understood that what humans called magic was simply science they couldn't comprehend yet. And with this knowledge, he could bridge that gap. But first, he needed to sleep. As he drifted off, he heard Ji-Won asking He-Yun questions, and He-Yun beginning to explain. His last thought before sleep took him was that his second wish would need to be just as carefully planned as his first. The world was about to change forever, and it would all start here in this small lab in Seoul. Du-Han woke up 12 hours later on the break room couch. His head no longer hurt, and the knowledge from He-Yun's wish had settled into his mind like it had always been there. He found Ji-Won and He-Yun sitting at a table nearby, deep in conversation. "The quantum mechanics we know is just the beginning," Ji-Won was saying, making notes on her tablet. She looked up when Du-Han sat up. "How are you feeling?" "Like I understand everything and nothing at the same time," Du-Han said. He walked to the table and picked up Ji-Won's tablet. On it were dozens of equations and diagrams. "These are good, but not quite right." He began to edit the equations. His fingers moved quickly across the screen as he wrote down what he now understood. Ji-Won watched with wide eyes as complex formulas filled the screen. "This is incredible," Ji-Won said. "You're showing how zero-point energy can be accessed using our current technology. This shouldn't be possible." He-Yun smiled as she watched them work. "And yet, it is. Your understanding of quantum mechanics gave you the foundation needed to grasp our power source. Most beings who receive this knowledge cannot make sense of it." Du-Han looked up from the tablet. "We need to build a prototype. Something small to prove it works." He turned to He-Yun. "Is that allowed? Using this knowledge to build things?" The wish was for understanding and the ability to replicate the power source. He-Yun said, "What you do with that knowledge is up to you, as long as it doesn't break the basic rules of wish-making." Over the next few days, Du-Han and Ji-Won worked non-stop. They converted part of their lab into a workshop. He-Yun helped by explaining concepts they didn't fully understand yet. She seemed impressed by how quickly they grasped the complex ideas. "Look at this," Ji-Won said one evening, holding up what looked like a small metal cube. "The energy readings are off the charts, just like when we first scanned He-Yun's box." Du-Han checked the readings on their instruments. The small device was producing more energy than a nuclear power plant, but without any radiation or waste. It was clean, safe, and nearly infinite. "We did it," he said quietly. "We actually did it." He-Yun floated closer to examine their work. "You've created a working zero-point energy generator in less than a week. My people took centuries to develop this technology." "That's because we had you to help us understand," Ji-Won said. "Without your knowledge, we might never have figured it out." Du-Han was about to agree when an alarm on his phone went off. "The 3 days are almost up," he said, looking at He-Yun. "I need to make my remaining wishes soon." "Yes," He-Yun said. "The half-wish and the final wish must be made before midnight tomorrow. But choose carefully. The knowledge you now have makes your next wishes even more important." Ji-Won looked confused. "Half-wish? How does that work?" "It's complicated," He-Yun said. "A half-wish has half the power, but twice the flexibility. It can bend certain rules that full wishes cannot." Du-Han picked up the small energy generator they had built. In his mind, he could already see how this technology would change the world. But he also understood that such power needed protection. His next wish would need to ensure this knowledge wouldn't be misused. "I think I know what my half-wish will be," he said. "But first, we need to document everything we've done here. The world needs to be ready for what's coming." He-Yun nodded approvingly. "You continue to surprise me, Du-Han Kim. Most beings would be drunk with power by now. Yet you think of responsibility first." Outside the lab windows, the sun was setting over Seoul. Soon, the world would change forever. Du-Han just hoped his remaining wishes would be enough to make sure it changed for the better. The news spread faster than anyone expected. Within days of Du-Han and Ji-Won publishing their research, the world's leading scientists were flying to Seoul. The small laboratory could barely hold all the visitors who came to see the revolutionary energy device. Du-Han stood at the front of the crowded lab, explaining their discovery to a group of international experts. Ji-Won operated the prototype, which powered the entire laboratory building without being connected to the power grid. He-Yun watched from a corner, having made herself visible only to Du-Han and Ji-Won. "The energy comes from what we call zero-point space," Du-Han explained, drawing diagrams on the whiteboard. It's completely clean, safe, and essentially limitless. A scientist from America raised his hand. But this breaks several laws of physics as we know them. How is this possible? The laws aren't broken, Jai-1 answered. Our understanding of them was just incomplete. She looked at where Hei-Yun stood, invisible to the others, and smiled slightly. The demonstration continued for hours. Every test confirmed what Du-Han and Ji-1 claimed. They had created an infinite energy source that could power the world without harming the environment. That evening, after everyone had left, Du-Han watched the news on his phone. Their discovery was the top story everywhere. Stock prices for oil and coal companies were dropping fast. World leaders were calling for international meetings to discuss the technology. "You've changed your world forever," Hei-Yun said, floating near the ceiling. "But change brings both opportunity and danger." Du-Han nodded. He had already received calls from military officials and large corporations. Everyone wanted control of the technology. "That's why my half-wish is so important. We need to protect this knowledge." Jai-1 brought them all tea and sat down heavily in her chair. She hadn't slept much in days. The United Nations is forming a special committee to oversee the implementation of the technology. They'd want us both to lead it. "Your species moves so quickly," Hei-Yun observed. "My people, the stellar architects, took generations to accept such changes. But humans, you embrace them in days." A notification popped up on Du-Han's phone. The president of South Korea wanted to meet with them tomorrow. Similar requests had come from other world leaders. "We should tell them everything," Jai-1 said. "About Hei-Yun, about the wishes, about what this technology really means." Du-Han shook his head. "Not yet. First, I need to use my half-wish. We have less than 12 hours left." Hei-Yun floated down to their level. "The half-wish is tricky. It has special rules. You must word it carefully." Outside the lab, they could hear protesters. Some supported the new technology. Others feared it. The whole world was watching Seoul, waiting to see what would happen next. "I think I know how to word it," Du-Han said. He looked at his phone again, reading news about energy companies trying to block their research. "The wish needs to make sure this technology helps everyone, not just the powerful." Jai-1 touched his arm gently. "Whatever you decide, I trust you. You've thought about this more carefully than anyone else would have." Hei-Yun nodded in agreement. "In all my time granting wishes, I have never seen someone use them with such wisdom. But remember, after the half-wish, you will have one final wish. And that one may be the most important of all." The sun was setting over Seoul, casting long shadows through the lab windows. Tomorrow, the world would be different. Du-Han just hoped his remaining wishes would be enough to make sure it changed for the better. The clock showed 11:30 at night when Du-Han finally finished writing his half-wish. He had spent hours carefully choosing each word, with Jai-1 and Hei-Yun helping him consider every possible outcome. "Are you sure about this?" Ji-1 asked, reading the paper where Du-Han had written his wish. The laboratory was quiet except for the soft hum of their energy prototype. "Yes," Du-Han said. "A half-wish is more flexible than a full wish." Hei-Yun explained that it can create lasting rules that even full wishes must follow. He looked at Hei-Yun for confirmation. Hei-Yun nodded, her starlight hair shimmering in the dim room. "That is correct. A half-wish can set boundaries that become part of the natural laws of your universe." Du-Han stood up and faced Hei-Yun. "Then I'm ready to make my half-wish." The air in the laboratory grew thick with energy. Hei-Yun's form began to glow brighter, and her voice took on a deeper, more powerful tone. "Speak your half-wish, Du-Han Kim." Du-Han took a deep breath and spoke carefully. "I wish that all zero-point energy technology, including our current prototype and any future versions, can only be used for peaceful purposes that benefit all of humanity equally. If anyone tries to use it for harm or personal gain, the technology will simply stop working." The air sparked with blue light. He Yun's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, everything in the room floated slightly off the ground. "Clever," He Yun said softly. "Very clever indeed. You've created a self-regulating system. The technology itself will now enforce peaceful use." Jai-Wan walked to their prototype and checked its readings. "It's still working perfectly, but something feels different about it. The half-wish has changed its fundamental nature," He Yun explained. "The technology is now bound by the new universal law Du-Han created. It can sense the intentions of those who try to use it." Du-Han picked up the prototype. It felt warmer than before, and he could somehow sense that it was more than just a machine now. It had become something new, a tool that could only be used for good. "We should test it," Jai-Wan suggested. She took the device and pretended to be angry. "I want to use this power to control others," she declared dramatically. Instantly, the prototype went dark. When she smiled and said, "I want to help people," it lit up again. "It works," Du-Han said, relieved. "Now nobody can misuse this technology. It will only work for those who want to help others." He Yun floated closer to examine the prototype. "In all my years of granting wishes, I have never seen a half-wish used quite like this. You've created something truly unique." Just then, Du-Han's phone rang. It was the United Nations Committee. They wanted to know why energy prototypes around the world were suddenly behaving strangely, only working for certain purposes. "What should I tell them?" Du-Han asked, looking at Jai-Wan and He Yun. "The truth," Jai-Wan said. "It's time to explain everything. About He Yun, about the wishes, about why the technology will only work for peaceful purposes." He Yun nodded in agreement. "Yes, but remember, you still have one full wish remaining. And now that the world knows about this technology, your final wish may be more important than ever." Du-Han looked out the window at the Seoul skyline. The city seemed different now, knowing that soon it would be powered by energy that could only be used for good. But he could also sense bigger changes coming. His final wish would need to address something even more important than energy: the relationship between Earth and the cosmic beings like He Yun. The sun was beginning to rise, marking the start of a new era for humanity. An era where technology and good intentions were permanently linked, thanks to a carefully worded half-wish. 1 week after Du-Han's half-wish changed the nature of zero-point energy technology, something unexpected happened. He Yun suddenly became very still during a laboratory meeting, her starlight hair glowing brighter than usual. "They're coming," she said quietly. "The stellar architects have noticed the changes on Earth. They're sending an overseer." Du-Han and Ji-Won exchanged worried looks. They had been so focused on Earth's reaction to the technology that they hadn't considered how other cosmic beings might respond. "Is that bad?" Ji-Won asked, watching as He Yun's form flickered with nervous energy. "It could be," He Yun replied. "The overseer, Su-min, is known for being very strict about the rules. No wish granter has ever allowed humans to understand our power source before." The air in the laboratory grew thick with energy, and a bright light filled the room. When it faded, another being stood there. Su-min looked similar to He Yun, but her hair was like a supernova, and her presence made the air crackle with power. "He Yun," Su-min said, her voice echoing with authority. "You have broken our most sacred law. You gave humans knowledge of the cosmic force." "I did not break any laws," He Yun responded firmly. "The wish was properly made and fell within the rules. I had no choice but to grant it." Su-min turned her attention to Du-Han and Ji-Won. Her gaze felt like it could see through their very souls. "You are the ones who now understand our power." "Yes," Du-Han said, standing straight despite his fear. "And we've used that knowledge to help our world." "Show me," Su-min commanded. Ji-Won activated their latest prototype, which now powered the entire research complex. She explained how Du-Han's half-wish had made it impossible for the technology to be used for harm. Su-min examined the device with growing interest. "Fascinating. You've created safeguards we never considered. She turned to He-yun. Perhaps this situation is more complex than I first thought. Humans have surprised us, He-yun said. They learn quickly and think in ways we had not imagined. Du-han still has one wish remaining, and I believe he will use it wisely. Su-min floated around the laboratory, examining their research notes and equipment. Our council is divided on this matter. Some believe humans are not ready for this knowledge. Others are intrigued by your progress. Du-han stepped forward. With respect, we've proven that we can handle this responsibility. The half-wish ensures the technology can only be used for good. True, Su-min admitted. But there are larger concerns. Your understanding of zero-point energy is just the beginning. Soon you will understand more about the cosmos, about us, about things your species was not meant to know for millennia. Knowledge itself is neutral, Jai once said. It's how we use it that matters. And we've shown we want to use it to help everyone. Su-min was quiet for a long moment, considering their words. Finally, she turned to He-yun. I will inform the council of what I've seen here. But be warned, the final wish may determine not just Earth's fate, but the future relationship between humans and the stellar architects. With another flash of light, Su-min disappeared. The laboratory felt strangely empty without her presence. What will the council decide? Du-han asked He-yun. I don't know, she replied. But your final wish might be able to influence their decision. Choose it carefully, Du-han Kim. The fate of 2 civilizations may depend on it. 3 days after Su-min's visit, Du-han sat in his office reviewing everything he had learned about the stellar architects. Ji-won worked nearby, analyzing data from their latest tests. He-yun floated silently by the window, watching the sunset over Seoul. The council will make their decision soon, He-yun said, breaking the silence. They rarely take this long to judge a situation. Du-han nodded, closing his notebook. Then it's time for the final wish. I think I know what needs to be done. Jai-won looked up from her work. Are you sure? This wish needs to solve everything. The council's concerns, Earth's future, and our relationship with the stellar architects. That's exactly what it will do, Du-han said. He stood up and walked to the center of the room. He-yun, I'm ready to make my final wish. He-yun turned from the window, her form glowing brighter. The air in the room became charged with energy, even more than during previous wishes. This is your last wish, Du-han Kim. Be certain of your words. Just then, another flash of light filled the room. Su-min appeared, along with 3 other stellar architects. Their combined presence made the laboratory equipment spark with excess energy. Wait, Su-min commanded. The council wishes to witness this final wish. It will determine our judgment of humanity. Du-han looked at each of the cosmic beings. Their faces showed different emotions. Curiosity, concern, and in some cases, what looked like hope. He took a deep breath and spoke clearly. I wish for Earth and humanity to be recognized as equals by the stellar architects, with all the rights, responsibilities, and knowledge that comes with that status. The room erupted with light. The stellar architects all showed surprise on their faces. Even He-yun seemed shocked by the wish. Equals. One of the new architects said, no species has ever wished for equality. They wish for power over us, or to be our servants, but never to be equals. Humans don't want to rule or serve, Du-han explained. We want to learn, to grow, and to work together. The zero-point energy was just the beginning. Imagine what our species could accomplish together. Su-min floated forward. This wish would give humans access to all our knowledge, not just zero-point energy. Are you prepared for such responsibility? We are, Jai-won said, standing next to Du-han. We've proven it with how we handled the energy technology. We want to be partners in making the universe better, not rulers or servants. He-yun raised her hands, preparing to grant the wish. The wish is properly made and falls within the rules. Shall I proceed? The architects looked at each other, having a silent conversation. Finally, Su-min nodded. Grant the wish, Heiyun. Let us see if humanity is truly ready for what comes next. Heiyun's power filled the room with brilliant light. Duhan felt knowledge flooding into his mind again, but this time it was different. He could sense it flowing not just into him, but into all of humanity. The understanding of cosmic forces, of space and time, of reality itself, all of it becoming part of human knowledge. When the light faded, something had changed. The architects no longer seemed distant and godlike. They were still powerful and amazing, but now Duhan could understand them as beings, not mysteries. It is done, Heiyun said softly. Humanity is now recognized as equals by the stellar architects. Everything will change. Yes, Sumin agreed, looking at Duhan with new respect. Everything will change indeed, and we will face those changes together, as equals. 1 year after Duhan's final wish, the Seoul Institute of Advanced Physics had grown into the Earth Stellar Exchange Center. The original laboratory was now part of a huge complex where humans and stellar architects worked together to share knowledge and solve problems. Duhan stood at the window of his new office, watching students from around the world arriving for their morning classes. Some came to study zero-point energy, while others learned about space travel, dimensional physics, or cosmic biology. In the courtyard below, a stellar architect named Minho was teaching a group about the nature of time itself. The first group of human students will graduate next month, Jai-won said, entering the office with a stack of papers. She was now the head of the exchange program's science division. They're already making discoveries that surprise even the architects. Duhan smiled. Humans think differently than the architects. We see solutions they might miss, just as they see things we might overlook. That's why working together is so important. Heiyun appeared in the room, her starlight hair shimmering as brightly as ever. She had chosen to stay on Earth as the main ambassador between humans and stellar architects. The Council is very pleased with humanity's progress, she said. Other species are now asking for similar partnerships. How is the energy program going? Duhan asked, turning from the window. Better than we hoped, Jai-won answered. Thanks to your half-wish, the technology can only be used for good. Every major city now has clean, free energy. Pollution is down by 60% worldwide. They walked together to the main conference room, where a meeting was about to start. Representatives from Earth's governments sat alongside stellar architects, discussing the next steps in their partnership. Sumin, who now served as the chief overseer of Earth stellar relations, led the meeting. Today we discussed the first human space colony, Sumin announced. Using our combined knowledge, we can create sustainable communities beyond Earth. The colony ships will use zero-point energy, of course. Duhan watched as humans and architects worked together, sharing ideas and solving problems. It was everything he had hoped for when he made his final wish. Humanity had gained not just knowledge, but true partners in exploring the universe. After the meeting, Heiyun pulled Duhan and Jai-won aside. Do you ever regret not wishing for something more personal? She asked. Most humans would have wished for wealth or power or love. Never, Duhan said firmly. This was always the better choice. We didn't just help ourselves. We helped everyone, including the architects. Now we all grow stronger together. Jai-won nodded in agreement. Though I still can't believe it all started with a strange box in our old laboratory. The box wasn't there by accident, Heiyun revealed with a smile. We had been watching humanity for centuries, waiting for the right person to find it. Someone who would wish for understanding instead of power. As they talked, a young student approached them with questions about a new theory she was developing. It combined human creativity with architect knowledge in ways neither civilization had considered before. This was happening more and more often, new ideas born from the partnership between species. Outside, the sun set over Seoul, its light reflecting off buildings powered by clean, safe energy. Ships that could touch the stars were being built in factories around the world. Children grew up knowing they could one day walk on distant planets, all because of 2.5 wishes, carefully made. "What comes next?" Jai-1 asked, looking out at the city. "Whatever we choose," Du-Han answered. "That's the beauty of it. Humans and architects, working together as equals. The possibilities are endless." Hei-Yun smiled, her starlight hair glowing in the evening light. And to think it all began with a wish for understanding rather than power. Sometimes, the wisest wish is not for what you want, but for what everyone needs.